welcome to Atlanta Mix 108. Up next is Author Talk with your host, M.L.Ruscsak.
From Atlanta, this is the Author Talk Show. I'm your host, M.L.Ruscsak, and I'm here with a special guest with me today, and his name is Steve, and I'm going to butcher your last name, so can you tell me your last name so I don't butcher it?
Rosner, R-O-S-N-E-R.
Thank you. I'm a horrible...
It's pronounced like there's a Z, but that's fine.
Yeah, I don't want to butcher your name, so I always ask the author to tell me the last name. Now, you have a book that just came out or been out for a little while. It's called God and Man, Love on the Rocks, and you can get this at Amazon here.
That's
Would you like to tell me a little bit about that?
The book is it's classified under spirituality, and there are four basic sections. It talks about the main theme. There's several main themes. The main theme is that, obviously, in my opinion, since Cain slew Abel, there has been unimaginable evil in the world by all peoples, all religions, throughout the millennium, including to this very day. And that is very tragic, since God created the world out of his love and graciousness and gave us very, very few requirements, that is, gave humans very few requirements that he asked for, and we, just continually fail to do so. So the point of the book is not only to inform the reader of, specifically of some of the evil throughout the centuries, because statistics, really don't do anything. But if you actually read excerpts from whatever different cultures or different religions or different kingdoms, and if you and you hear actually personal details, say about the Inquisition or about whoever, Christians killing Christians, Muslims killing Hindus, Jews killing Jews, et cetera, it really becomes more vivid. In order to get that point across, of course, one must believe in God, and so the first section talks about God. There's a chapter that actually, in my judgment, proves God exists by pure reason, which is a fairly simple proof, and there's no really, there's no really answer. I mean, if you don't accept it, then you're not using logic the way we're supposed to use logic. It talks about man, the soul, the body. It talks about good and evil, Satan, whether evil exists, independent of good, et cetera, and who is God? What are some of his attributes? The second section is a survey of 6 different religions: Judaism, I happen to be of the Jewish faith, and Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism and Confucianism. I picked those 6. There are a lot more. It's a brief survey of both the history and the creeds of each, and I try to show that at their base,
they're all similar.
They are basically the same. They are basically the same. That is, namely, number 1 is that, love your neighbor like yourself. Treat others the way you would want to be treated. You could find it. That's all in the Old Testament. It's in the New Testament. It's in the Quran. It's it's part of the other religions itself. The fact that the rituals and everything else differs radically is, I don't know why, but unfortunately, in many cases, the people that came after, they changed the religion to suit their own needs or purposes, whether they did it, sincerely or totally, out of corruption. It's hard to say. Having done that, the next section goes through both religious conflicts. One section devoted to intra, that is, conflicts between religions, which includes Judaism and Christianity, between Protestant and Catholics, between Catholics and different sects that arose before Protestantism, between Hindus, and Muslims, between Shiites.
You're covering a lot of information.
Right,
in these
it's
sections.
It's a lot of ground, and then 4 chapters on actually the history. Some starting biblical, the history of evil as presented, as shown in the Bible, which I take literally to be true. And then throughout the centuries, from the Mongols, it talks about in Napoleon and World War I and the Russian Civil War and the Holocaust and the genocides recently. Substantial examples of the evil in the world.
Right, and the thing is, it tends to run in cycles or circles. You have a lull with everything coming back down, then some conflict starts back up again, especially within the religions. This is something that a history teacher taught a long time ago when I was in school. With the conflicts in the religion, it runs on a circle. You have times of peace and you have times of war, and then you have times of evil within that leads to the war within the religions. Does that make sense? That
does make sense, although, I might think offhand that the peaceful cycles, if there are such, are very, are minor compared to the cycles of, the evil cycles. And,
right.
So I don't forget, because this is really important, is that evil does not pay. That those who commit evil eventually are destroyed, maybe not right away, but that God knows what they're doing, God knows who's righteous, and that, evil does not pay again and again and again. Even in the examples that I give, you will find those nations who committed evil are destroyed, no longer heard from, or, are basically, very, very minor. Sometimes it takes centuries, for example, the Roman Empire. Given all that, the question is, and this is most important, what can we do? What can you do, Melissa? What can I do to try to make the world a better place? And the answer to me is try to be a little more compassionate and try to have a little more integrity. That's really all God asks for. All the ritual, it doesn't matter to me, I happen to be observant as a Jew, but it really boils down to righteousness is what God requires. I also, at the last part of the book, indicate God requires righteousness. If we are, we get blessed. If we're not, we don't. God would like, he can't require it, he would like a relationship with humans, with you and me, and that's why he created us, I believe, and that any human can have a relationship with God, but, they need to want it. And so there are a number of suggestions in the book, practical suggestions. Are you crazy, Steve? How do you go about having a relationship with God? Well, I do. In my mind, I do. And the book states God will help a person real time. As crazy as it sounds, if you really try to do better, if a person tries to do better and you try to connect to God, whatever you don't get it doesn't matter who you are, Christian, Jew, whatever. I would even say even an agnostic or an atheist, an atheist wouldn't connect to God because that would make no sense to him. But anyone who really tries to gain God's, blessing and gain insight, because God knows everything. He knows your thoughts. He knows, certainly what you say. And you can, it's really unbelievable. I mean, my mind doesn't comprehend it, but he communicates to you, in ways, again and again. It takes a while, and it's not going to happen overnight, but I, show what you can do to start the process. And to me, he communicates in ways that, are just, it still boggles my mind that he, guides me as to whether something is good or bad. Not even talking about something moral, talking about, whether I should go here and try that business or do that. There are different ways that he does that, and I point that out in the book. There's also a chapter on suffering and the causes of suffering, the reasons for suffering, whether we can blame God or not. Up front, I have to say, if there are certain, we can't answer all those questions. The book of Job asks that question because Job was righteous and he suffered, and it's worth reading by any listener who really cares about these matters. But I would say 95. I would say there's a 90% of what some of us might blame God for suffering is not his fault. We cannot blame him, and it's our fault. And, we're not really, being fair in blaming him. One primary example, and this is really important for your listeners, is auto accidents. 95% of auto accidents are caused by human error. Now, how could you blame God if you're texting and you get into an accident, or if you pass a red light, or
you're drinking behind the wheel,
right, or you're drinking, and this is really important too. I put it out. Let's say a couple of days it's a little wet wherever you live. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and you start out and you skid a little bit, but you're just starting out at 5 miles an hour and you ignore it, and then this happens 2, 3, 4 times, and then, God forbid, a month later, it's raining, you need to stop, it doesn't stop, you get into a skid and you hurt maybe someone innocent, but certainly your car is wrecked, you're in the hospital. Whose fault is that? Yours or God's? Your fault, because God gave you multiple warnings. To me, the slightest thing now, I didn't always do it, I always procrastinated. The slightest thing now, I go to my mechanic and say, could you check it out? My windshield wipers don't work, my brakes don't work. If there's an example of one friend of mine, he drove from Canada to New York, and his wife, he was getting sleepy, and his wife said, please stop, rest. Oh, no, I could, how men are, I could do this. And he fell asleep at the wheel. Fortunately, it was stop-and-go traffic, so he was only going at 10 miles an hour when he hit the car in front of him, and there wasn't that much damage. But again, if whatever, is it God's fault that he was not smart enough to listen? So that's one example. It's really important to understand first of all what suffering is, and whether we can blame God. And certainly you can't answer all those questions, but I would hope that 95 or 90% of what we might attribute to God blame for suffering really is, you can't really blame it on him.
Now, I'm going to stop you for just a second. For just a second. We were talking before the show started about a rebate that you wanted to give to our listeners, and I really want you to have time to tell our 108 listeners about your generous rebate offered for those who purchased your book.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. First of all, I want to say that the book itself, without any rebate, it's on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, whatever, and it's $12.95. It's a paperback, 330 pages. So it's really not that expensive. I priced it. I priced it, and just so listeners know, if they're curious, for every book sold, I think I would earn $1.20. It's not, but I could have priced it at $19.95 and earned much more, but I wanted to make it as inexpensive as possible. This is, to not even get out the word, but because I believe the book will have an impact, however small, even the smallest impact on your listeners or whoever buys it. And by the way, I'll go back. I just want to say, God, in my judgment, and this all religions don't believe this, God has feeling. He feels terrible when we suffer. He feels terrible that there's evil in the world, and anything we can do to make him feel a little better, he appreciates it. And the book gives you very, very simple things. Like what I do is if I'm walking and there's a coffee cup or a flyer on grass, I pick it up and I say to myself, it's terrible what people, they're so insensitive to your creation, God, and he appreciates that. In any case, the rebate is as follows. If you buy it on Amazon, you have to buy it actually on Amazon. You have to buy the paperback, which is $12.95. But I don't care. You could have a special deal and you buy it for $9.95. It doesn't matter to me. I personally will rebate $5 to you, to any listener who purchased that book during the entire month of July. So as long as you purchase it in July, I will send you $5. Now, the offer is limited to 5 books per household. You could actually buy 5 books, in which case I will send you a $25 rebate. You could purchase them all at one time or, 2 once and one another, as long as they're purchased by July. And to receive it, this is what you do. You simply email me. I won't even give you my email because it's in the book. It's in the copyright page on the author contact. There's no point giving it to you here. Just email me at the address on the copyright page with the mailing address where the check is to be sent, and you attach the electronic Amazon proof of purchase receipt. So you'll be emailing me with proof of purchase receipt, the name, obviously the mailing, the name or address of where you want the check sent. That is, it will be made out to the purchaser. So whoever purchases it, even if it's for someone else, it will be made out to the purchaser that's on Amazon, and I'll make out a check on the receipt within 3 business days, and that's the offer. Again, whoever from the show listens, buys God and Man, Love on the Rocks from Amazon. I've written 2 other books, but that particular book, and sends me an email with a proof of purchase with the address of where it should be sent, I will send $5 for each book bought, up to $5 per household. Also, if you have friends or relatives, if you like the book and you have friends or relatives who didn't listen to this show, and you say, this is really a good book, you know what? Let them buy the book also before July 31st, and I'll send them $5. There's no coupon. There's nothing that you have to write saying, I listen to 108 FM, but presumably, I'm not making this offer anyplace else, so, hopefully I'll get a few emails, and I'm very, very happy to do that.
Well, it's a very good rebate, and it was a very good offer for you to generously do this for our listeners. Not a lot of authors would put their book in the negative to get this book out to their readers. So it's very generous of you to make this offer to begin with.
Well, thank you, Melissa. Look, it's generous of you to have me on, and it's, I hope that, a few dozen, I don't know what to expect, but I hope that both the rebate as well as just maybe learning about the book, which their websites you can go to read about it. One example, there's an independent author network. If you go there, you'd have to just Google it. I don't have the exact address, but I have joined that network, and if you go there, it's not hard to find out more about me and more about the book, if you care to.
That would be great. Are you going to any author events this summer, fall, winter that you are already scheduled for?
No, not at this point. I've written 3 books, actually. A Guide to the Psalms of David in second edition, 2015, which indexes all 150 psalms by theme, by purpose, a couple of other, so that, a person can actually go through like a table, and I need a psalm for asking God for help, or I need a psalm to thank God, or, et cetera, to affirm God, or for pastors who have, who want to give a sermon, then it's, by themes, God's retribution, God's compassion. There's about 10 or 12 categories per there are subcategories per category. That is, it's divided by purpose, by theme, by audience, and by mood. So there are 4 different ways of going to looking at the Psalms, and there's also a chapter of 20 common life situations that delineate specific Psalms that you might say, again, in my opinion, Psalms before surgery, Psalms if you're, looking for a husband or a wife, Psalms if you're married but you don't have a child, and, Psalms thanking God for help. If you're going to war, unfortunately, or you're drafted, Psalms before that, and other common, life situations as well. And then the translation is heartfelt, I believe, and so I translate all the Psalms myself. That wasn't really the purpose of the book. Originally I was going to, it was mainly to do the indexing because I had the database technology, but I decided to translate it, and I must say, if I could give myself one compliment, the greatest compliment that I've gotten really in all my books is from a clinical psychologist who read the book and, was reading the Psalms and said, your book brought tears to my eyes for the first time. I could feel David's heart breaking. That was like the biggest compliment to me, showing me that my translation or rendition, really touched him, and I think it touches other readers. And then a second book in 2016 is called God is Good, and also available at Amazon. Basically what it does is there are 155 or so times in the Old Testament where people, an individual or a nation or a group of people pray to God for something specific, and, I compiled them, and as it turns out, 90% of the time, God said yes. Imagine that. 90% of the time, God said yes to a specific request. And I write in the preface or whatever, preface, if your father said yes 50% of the time, you would think you have the greatest father in the world. Well, God said yes 90% of the time. So this particular book goes over each event or episode and gives the background of the episode. Who appealed to him, whether it was Moses, whether it was David, whether Cain was the first one that appealed to him. After he killed Abel, he said that, he'll walk around, they'll kill him, and God said, all right, I'll put a sign on your head, and you'll be good for 7 generations, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the second book, and this just came out. And now that they all came out, I just started trying to market them, I guess, myself. And so it's a long, roundabout way of answering your question. But, no, I haven't scheduled, or I'm not scheduled to do any, live talks or interviews. But hopefully that will happen in the near
Hopefully
future.
this will be the first of many for you.
Right. Well, it certainly... I think it's going to be one of the best. I mean, I have been interviewed prior to this on radio related to the Psalms book, maybe 2 years ago. Most of them, were 10 minutes and so on and so forth. This interview, you've been extremely generous, and you let me do most of the talking. And to be honest, I think I'm a little...
You have all the information about your book. You know your book. You're passionate about your book. And I'm just here to bring out your passion. I'm not here to dictate your answers.
Well, I thank you very much. You've done certainly a great job doing that. And I don't know if you could hear the background. There's always alarms coming up. But
well, you said you're in Brooklyn, so I was wondering when I was going to hear a siren.
Right. You're in Atlanta, am I correct? Or
no, the show is in Atlanta. I'm actually in Ohio.
Oh, okay.
I'm in a very, very small town of Ohio. So.
Okay. Well,
we have the entire.
Do you have any other questions, or I hope maybe down the road we can talk again. I'd be more than happy to.
Oh, we'd love to have you on the show again. But I think our time's getting ready to run out, and it was really great hearing about your book, actually all 3 of your books. And keep me posted if you have any live events coming up in your region. The Authors Guild just hired a couple of representatives, and they're going to be doing Author Guild events in your area. I don't have the dates, but when I get them, if you would like me to shoot you an email, I can do that. Or at least get you in front of a great, bigger audience or your neighborhood audience.
I'd be happy to. My clock says 3:26. Before, whatever we go off, I guess we have another 30 seconds?
Yes.
Right? Am I right?
Yes.
This is just Appendix 6, and I'll just read it. It's 10 truisms about God, and I think it might be helpful. Number 1, God helps those that help themselves. That is true. You have to do something actively. You can't just expect to just, pick up a lottery and win $1 million. 2, your deeds, good or bad, will come back to you. 3, God will almost always give you the benefit of the doubt. 4, God will help you real time if you let him. And I really mean that. If you, in the book I say, ask God with your lips for a parking spot in Manhattan. Sometimes he says no, but you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised how many times you'll find one. Kindness and compassion go a long way with God is 5. God is reasonable. 6, you can negotiate with him. 7, God gives his love and blessing to those deserving. 8, if you sincerely repent of evil, God will forgive you. He will wipe it away, which is mentioned many times, especially in Ezekiel. And 9, God does not want you to appease those who are evil. Some of us seem to think, well, God wants you to separate yourself from those you know are evil. And finally, maybe most important, especially for people, whatever, who are contemplating marriage or a relationship or anything, follow your intuition. It comes directly from God. I really, really believe it. If if your head says yes, 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 but your heart says no, go no, because that really will save you a lot of grief.
Thank you for your words of wisdom. And again, this is my guest, Stephen Rosner, and I hope to see you again. And to my listeners, thank you for listening and happy reading. Good night, Atlanta.
Thank you. Bye-bye.